First, let me just thank everybody for joining today. Really appreciate your taking some time. People had asked the question because we had scheduled 2 meetings initially, one here and one supposedly in person in Phoenix. And the latter one is being canceled simply because we won't be in person. And I don't know that we're going to need 2 meetings, less than a month apart. And so we'll just go with this particular meeting. I have to keep my eye open. There's still people trying to join here. While we're waiting just a minute or two, I think it'd be fun to go around and let everybody just introduce themselves briefly. I'm Neil Charness. I'm director of the Institute for Successful Longevity at Florida State University. And I'll invite others. Patricia, do you want to say hi, please?
Happy to. Hello, everyone. Nice to see all of you today. My name is Patricia Hein. I'm Associate Professor of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation with the School of Medicine at the University of Colorado. And my research is on Alzheimer's disease, as well as identifying risk factors for AD in individuals aging with pediatric onset disabilities. Thank you.
Peter?
Everybody, Peter Lichtenberg, Director of the Institute of Gerontology at Wayne State University in Detroit.
Michelle?
Hey, everybody. I'm Director of the Center on Aging at the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, Canada.
Ross?
Ross Sandell here. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. I'm a director of the School of Aging Studies at the University of South Florida.
Suzanne?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Suzanne Kunkel, Director of the Scripps Gerontology Center at Miami University.
Ken?
Hello, I'm Ken Ferraro from Purdue University Center on Aging in the Life Course.
James?
Yeah, hello.
Needs
James
no
Alpert.
introduction, but
James Alpert with GSA staff. Great to be here.
Aaron?
I'm Erin Emery Tiburcio with the Rush Center for Excellence in Aging at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago.
Miles?
I'm Miles Taylor. I'm director of the Pepper Institute on Aging and Public Policy at Florida State University.
Cassandra?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Cassandra, and I'm the director of the Aging Studies program at Eastern Michigan University.
Len?
Hi, everyone. I'm Len Kay. I'm director of the Center on Aging at the University of Maine.
Pamela?
Hi, I'm Pam Teester. I'm the professor and the director for the Center for Gerontology at Virginia Tech.
Robin?
Robin Golden at Rush, doing the same thing as Aaron. And I wish we were together. I'm sure nobody wishes we were together more than James, but good to see everyone.
Joanne?
Hi, Joanne Monapar, Director of the Fuss Center for Research on Aging and Intergenerational Studies at Age Friendly University, LaSalle in the Boston area.
Wendy?
Hi, everybody, Wendy Rogers. I'm at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I direct a program called CHART, which is Collaborations in Health, Aging, Research, and Technology. And I'll be muting my video in a moment so I can eat my lunch and you don't have to watch me.
Esme?
Hi, I'm Esme Fuller-Thompson. I'm at the University of Toronto, where I'm a professor in social work and director of the Institute for Life Course and Aging.
Gina? Everybody knows
Hi.
Gina, I hope.
I'm Gina Schoen with the Gerontological Society of America.
Nicole?
Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Fowler with the Indiana University Center for Aging Research.
Karen?
I'm Karen Fingerman, and I direct the UT Austin, Texas Aging and Longevity Center. And I'm also the research director for our Center on Aging and Population Sciences.
Diane?
Diane Martin. I'm director for the Geriatrics and Gerontology Education and Research Program at University of Maryland, Baltimore.
Molly?
Hi, everybody. My name is Molly Maxfield. I'm at Arizona State University. I'm here on behalf of David Kuhn, who's the director of the Center for Innovation in Healthy and Resilient Aging, and I'm currently serving as the associate director.
Sarah?
Sarah Qualls, University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, director of the Gerontology Center.
John?
Hello, I'm John Schumacher. I'm from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I'm co-director of our doctoral program in gerontology, and then also part of our Center for Aging Studies. Thanks.
And there's a meeting participant with no name. Could you maybe introduce yourself? Or maybe not. Okay.
Oh, I guess that's me. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
This
there's
is
no
Dave.
label.
I'm like, why is no one answering? This is Dave Burdick from Stockton University's Center on Successful Aging in Southern New Jersey. Sorry, Neil, I didn't notice.
Should have recognized you and I didn't. My apologies.
Thanks, Neil.
Yeah, you came in as meeting participant.
I did.
Okay. All right, let me shift over to kind of the rest of the agenda for today. And now we've kind of quickly introduced ourselves. I'm going to start with a little luck. This thing will open, which it isn't. It's probably already an open window somewhere on my desktop. And no, it isn't. So let me open it on a second computer. We have a number of items on our agenda today. We'll see how we progress on those. I'm going to turn it over first to Pat, because she has been working with a very important subcommittee on a project that had been discussed, I guess, maybe about a year ago. Is that right, Pat? I can't remember for sure. And there's been a subgroup of our membership trying to work on the idea of putting together a leadership training program aimed at broadly directors of aging centers, but it can go for obviously more than just aging center directors. And so, Patricia, you want to take over and say a little bit about it?
Certainly, yes. And I forgot that we are in the directors meeting. So I have been the director of our Cochrane Institute at the University of Colorado, and my section is the aging. And I have been the co-director of the Diversity Mentoring Career Development GSA R13 workshop, which has the goal to develop early career trainees into the field, and especially from diverse background, and enhance the diversity in the field. So with those experiences, and we are on our third year in terms of this R13 grant that is funded for GSA. We submitted the application. We were funded for another 5 years because it was such a great program. And through this program, we learned that there has been lots of interest in our early career trainees in developing more leadership and looking for other opportunities aside from the usual scientific and research track, and interested in getting to different areas and receiving training and mentorship. So we've seen that, we discussed that, we have such a rich talent in terms of leadership and wisdom in the gerontology field with this group. So this is, you can get better, right? This is, if we put all the knowledge, the years of knowledge, the expertise into a one product, it is amazing what is available here. And so when I talked to some of you, and I mentioned that with Neil and Peter, like how we can capitalize the knowledge, this expertise into advancing the field, and especially preparing the future generation to take over. So I have been in this field for, I don't know, over 20 years, and I see so many of the transition of our experts leaving the field, and we would love to keep our retirees involved, but then we don't have that sequel. It's very hard like to keep nourishing other individuals to take those roles. So by saying that, we talk about how we can now use the wisdom here to train the next generation to really advance and to do like a heads up, start up kind of opportunities, and create like a kind of a lead gerontology academy or institute that will provide that kind of support, that training based on the expertise from this group that I think is so much to give, and we are not really taking advantage. So when we talk about that, we are trying to think how best to do. Should we look into this R13? The NIA is very interested in fostering development, career, and advancing the field, and especially like I myself, even though I'm white and blonde, I come from South America, and I know the importance that is like for us to have such opportunities for career development. So also helping some of the individuals who has the talent, but might not be having the opportunity and the resources to interact with professionals at that level, the caliber that you are. So putting all that into context, we start to think about, how we should develop this potential academy, who will be our consumers. We already have so much going on for early careers. So if you look at the portfolio of the NIH and many other resources, always the focus is on early career. And there's not much for mid-career, which will be the individuals that we wanted them to take over some of those high-profile leadership positions and have impact. So maybe developing some institute that has a focus on the mid-career and help them to advance to the more senior and take those leadership. Maybe having, again, using what GSA has been so successful is this R13 workshop that they have the function to be a training workshop and give scholarship and support to individuals to participate in aging and gerontology in the gerontology field, or go to some more sophisticated. There is also some other training mechanisms that could be done through to the universities as a multi-site, where we are going to have kind of an internship program. And also we look like at the future, so how we should be training, because gerontology today is so different than it was 10 or 20 years ago. And thinking about what's going on, how what we experience with COVID and all the changes in technology and climate crisis, how we can also think about this future and prepare the professionals to be successful, considering that we are always evolving and leading with new problems that need solutions and innovations. And I stop here. It was a good, Neil. I did a good
I think you did a very good.
Thank you.
Very good. Let me just share my screen a second, because we did, or I should say, Patricia did a lot more than just talk about this. We've had some meetings and we've already started on a potential grant proposal. And one of the things I guess that might be useful at this point in time is, and it's kind of my fault, I fell a little bit behind. I wanted to circulate this in its current state. It's been through, basically it's back and forth between Patricia and myself. And so we haven't had an opportunity to get feedback or much feedback yet from the other members of the subcommittee, like Peter and James and I guess other Patricia. And so what I'll do eventually, probably after the meeting, is try to circulate this document to our group for feedback as a whole. I'm anticipating the people with the most to gain from feedback, the members of the subcommittee, will try to work with any suggestions that you make and try to restructure this as it needs to be restructured. So it's already, a reasonably long document, but one of the things we were struggling with a little bit is what are the areas that we think are, or at least what are the skill sets that we think strong leaders would have to be effective in their roles, and more specifically, their roles as leaders in gerontology. And so we have a number of ideas for that. Some of them are listed here. Some of them come from kind of traditional theories of who's a leader. If you look in industrial organizational psychology literature. And the other thing will be how we would evaluate the potential effectiveness of this particular type of program. And then something else we were considering too, and this would involve basically short visits on the part of people, assuming we can get funded for this. We'd have short visits to existing aging centers. And so we would probably need some volunteers to provide, it's not quite an internship, but at least an internship visit to their institute, so people have a sense of what's involved in kind of the day-to-day running of these types of institutes. And we represent a very, very diverse group in terms of the missions of our centers and so on. But so we've already got kind of a rough outline of how we would run this workshop, and I'm just showing you some of the proposed text so far, and how we would go about particularly the leadership, mentorship, internship. It's a lot to say. How a fellow would do perhaps a 2-day visit to a center and basically learn something about the day-to-day operation, and what are the things that center directors are typically engaged in. As I said, it's probably going to vary enormously across our centers because we have, as I said, very different missions. Depending on the time of year, we're either very busy with some program, or we could be in a slack period where there's not a lot going on, aside from kind of normal manage email, manage your newsletter, manage your brown bags or speakers, or whatever you're currently engaged with. So I'll try to circulate that. Let me just stop that share. But now's a good time if people have some ideas or thoughts on the best way to move forward. As I said, I'll circulate this. We'll try to get some feedback. We were thinking of an R13 mechanism, and it would be submitted through GSA. But there are other mechanisms. I was made aware, I guess, Patricia, you mentioned like I think it was R25 as another potential mechanism.
Yeah. And also I want to add, so we have here Patricia De Antonio. She is the co-director on this R13, which is a training and mentoring workshop. And James Appleby, who are so they definitely can bring some intel in the perspective of the GSA and how to integrate the Gerontological Society into our science, our work. And so I just want to acknowledge that they are really critical in this development. So I don't want to leave them out of the process. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Any quick thoughts or not so quick thoughts? As I said, we'll circulate the document.
Neil, a question about, I'm not sure how much data you have on the nature of each of the centers, given how diverse we all are. Some are doing research, clinical, education, a whole variety of different things. In terms of the application, I wonder if it would be helpful to, if there is additional information that you might need, in part to just sort of enhance, hey, we can really get a wide swath of potential learners in this space, as well as for future matching of either mentors and or internship sites to make sure that it's kind of heading in the direction that the learner would like to go.
That's a great suggestion. And one of the things we were talking about doing as part of the grant process was doing a survey to find out something about the needs as expressed by the people who would be on this particular call, as an example. Because again, each of us kind of, I can't say it often enough, we're a very diverse group. we cater to different audiences in some cases. We have some obviously common interests. And let me just admit somebody again, if I can. And so one of the things, we kind of had a maybe somewhat inchoate thought that when we're looking around, in some cases for more senior people like myself, for potential replacements down the line, what are the sorts of people? Wouldn't it be nice if there was sort of a pipeline of sorts? Because I know we're, almost every year there's an ad of some sort for an open director of aging center position. What are the needs? What are the types of activities we engage in? And as you point out, Aaron, what might be good internships for people who are headed in a particular direction, which might be more clinically oriented type of center, or more maybe a more academic research oriented. Sorry, not to say that there isn't clinical research, there is, but it's a different flavor for other types of centers. So yes, I like that suggestion a lot.
So hi,
Yeah,
Neil, Len here from Maine. Two unrelated points. Number one, I don't think we have a directory of center directors and brief descriptions of our points of focus, mission, vision, etc. And it seems to me that would be relatively easy to compile and online, and that could help guide us, I think, in terms of speaking where mentoring might take place, given the particular interests of the mentees. And the other unrelated point I want to make is I tried to quickly read what the skill set was going to be in the proposal that individuals would emerge with. And I don't think I saw the ability to, in this day and age, to pivot and maintain a robust program in the face of a pandemic that is ongoing and any other public health emergencies that we may confront in the future.
Yeah, great points, Len, as well. Your first point is well taken, and we do have a list, or at least at our site, we keep a list of all the centers for whom we have directors in our group. But you're right, we don't have their specific mission statements and so on. And so I think something we could probably put together is a Google Doc, perhaps, that we could ask people to fill in, so you can just provide those things. I mean, it's possible to track it down from your websites, particularly most websites have the mission statements and so on, but each of you has a kind of a unique perspective on what your center currently is doing. And so I think I agree, that would be really helpful. So thanks for that suggestion.
Neil, I would add to that sort of a little bit of demographics about the centers, how many people, affiliates you have, or those sorts of things, because that makes a big difference.
That's a great suggestion too, Joanne. Thanks. Any other ideas? As I said, I kind of hit you with a big document, which, as I said, I should have circulated before. I've been kind of tied down with other things at the last month or so, sadly. But once you have it, if you can provide comment, that'd be great. And
Neil, a few people have their hands up, Peter and Patricia.
Yeah,
Peter goes first.
Yeah, jump in.
Yep, I'll jump in. Neil and Patricia, first, I really want to thank you guys. This is an amazing amount of work that you've done, and it's a great way to get this started. It's so important. And I do think there's a real need for it, not just for mid-career people who are thinking about it. I think back to when I started, I created my own internship at 3 different sites, and it was incredibly valuable. And so even new center directors maybe would really appreciate this kind of opportunity. So I commend you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Patricia?
I just would like to say I really like the comment about that, the skill set ability to maintain a robust program, and that could be in terms of the NIH being strategic about one of the aims and goals. That could be actually the goal of the grant, because obviously the NIH will be very interested in breeding these successful leaders that will be successful in grantsmanship, and so that could be actually one of the areas of the proposal.
Yeah, I mean, that's on our agenda a little bit later, which is kind of the lessons learned from COVID. So yeah, it's still so current. It's kind of hard to say what all the lessons are we're absorbing or have absorbed. But yeah, we'll get to that agenda item soon. Carolyn Aldman had to drop out last minute. She wanted to get some feedback about current practices for hiring. I'm going to leave that item for the moment, and we'll kind of circulate. I think we may have already, I can't remember whether we did or didn't, circulate her item on the listserv. Does that sound familiar? No? Okay, maybe we didn't. We will in that case. We'll circulate that around. And this concern, she was, I guess, a little concerned about kind of a restriction that was placed by upper administration on a particular hire in terms of procedures and the ways in which to go about doing this. But I'll circulate that a little bit later. The next point I wanted to get to, and this will be Pam's point, how GERO programs are or are not inserting themselves into university diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. So Pam, can you take over?
I will simply just follow your lead, Neil. Just saying hi to everyone. It's great to see you all. My screen in the back is a view off my deck in the morning. So I'm just saying, and the trees are looking just great where I am. Before I start with this thing, and I hope I don't get too torqued off about it, but before I get onto this, I want to say that we at my Center for Gerontology launched a brand new certificate for leadership in an aging society. It's interesting because I think it's a parallel to what you all are talking about. We recognize that we were missing a practitioner market. And so we created a completely online 12 credits certificate for leadership in an aging society. It is interdisciplinary at the very best, and we hope we have hired the best adjuncts who could not get better than Bob Blancato, Georgia Annitzberger, Candy Heisler, Rich Brody. These are the people who are teaching that class. I'd completely mess it up, but they are just still living in at the top of their game, and that is what we have done as a parallel to what you're proposing for center directors and mentorship and training. It won't show, but I was at one time, I trained as an ELUM. Somebody is in Pennsylvania, you'll know about them. And that was a really meaningful group. I was essentially on a different sort of administrative track at that time, but just pointing that out. So that's that. Now, to the issue at hand. If you were reading, as I was, the Wall Street Journal or other news outlet, just recently, you will notice the latest thing that ought to get everybody's ageist ire up. And that was the summary dismissal of over 60 docents from the University of the Chicago Art Institute. Why? They were white and they were well-heeled and they were old. The way the whole article, go look it up. It ought to make you mad. The way it got pitched was they were white and old. Okay, so that's the issue for that's a DEI entry. But they never talked about the fact that every one of them were older women, and they just fired them all. So I had a woman in tears yesterday on a Zoom call about that. I'm writing an editorial. Okay, now to the issue at hand. Our DEI people do not seem to embrace the issue of ageism as a DEI issue. And I'm just wondering what the rest of your experiences is. It is embarrassing to tell you how by stealth I had to get on this committee. If you want to check me out sometime with wine, I'll tell you the whole story about how I did it. But it was hard to get on it because they don't recognize it. I talked to a colleague up at St. Cloud State that makes me an N of 2, but she's having the same trouble. And I just am having trouble with it. I finally got on that committee, but truthfully, it was because a neighbor of mine was next door and she promised to be a mole when my name wasn't on, which it wasn't. So I'm just throwing that out there. I think that is I think that's a problem. And I think it's an ageist problem. And I'd love to hear your comments. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Pam. I think a lot of us resonate to that, but yeah, Robin, you put your hand up quickly. And I can't see everybody's hand because I have to flip between screens. So if I don't get to you right away, I'll let you know. Ross, next, Dave, Burdick after that.
So we couldn't agree with you more, Aaron and I, and we have made a little headway, I think, not, some, don't you agree, Aaron, in terms of weaseling our way in, mostly because we're in a medical center as well. We've been able to make it about health, quality, equity, that regard, that if we don't treat older adults better or, view them as having health disparities, we're missing the mark. So I think we've been able to inch it in that way, but I think it's been harder in other arenas.
Thanks, Robin.
The
Ross,
whole
I think you're
DEI
next.
piece.
Ross?
Yeah, I just unmute myself real quick, sorry. At USF, where I am, we just connected with our Center for Diversity and Inclusion and created a task force on age diversity that we're pursuing along with the sort of the age-friendly university global network effort. So they have been really receptive to it. Our provost wants to be updated on how it's going. We're inviting all the deans to a meeting to see what kind of education we offer for older adults. So it really hasn't been that bad. But I think the first step was to connect with the Office for Diversity and Inclusion and have them kind of open their eyes to what we're after. And it's been good.
I want to add that at my university, I have Rosemary Bleasner and Karen Roberto, and those are two gerontological rock stars, as you know. We both wrote to our DEI person here, and this was years ago, impassioned email about including in the DEI initiatives at our university ageism. And those, we didn't even get a response for them. So I'm just pointing that out, that I think it's terribly ageist, to be quite frank.
Thanks again, Pam. David, Burdick?
Yeah, at Stockton University, we've been able to get on the radar of some people through a variety of things. There was a diversity and inclusion listening session as part of Stockton's strategic plan. We weren't able to get someone on the implementation committee, but we do have a new diversity and inclusion newsletter, and our AFU effort was one of their first profiled stories of adding age as a diversity issue. And our enrollment management people seem to recognize they've got to get back to age diversity in the student body with the changing demographics. So yesterday in an enrollment management meeting, the head of enrollment management said, we're having our first orientation session ever for non-traditionals. And my university used to have much more age diversity, but it's changed over the years. So it sometimes takes personal contact with people, key stakeholders in different departments. But AFU and the report from the AFU research project at UMass Boston and Amherst has been really helpful so far, and we're going to use that for leverage.
Great point. Thank you. James, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to echo the sentiments around the fact that so many organizations and institutions do not see aging as a point of diversity. It's not only in the academic world, it's also in the corporate world. If you look at websites that corporations have that talk about their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, age is most often not mentioned. So it's certainly a pervasive issue, and it's certainly one that GSA is aware of, and we're trying to raise additional awareness of it through our framing aging work that Patricia De Antonio leads, and then also through a multi-year effort actually working with AARP, having to do with increasing age inclusivity on college campuses. And I want to give a shout out to Joanne Montapar, who's been leading that work group at GSA and working with Augie to advance this activity and to provide resources to support age inclusivity on college campuses, including as part of that, promoting the age-friendly university network that Dublin City University in Ireland has gotten started. So yeah, this is a big deal, and in many ways, college campuses are the perhaps least age-inclusive place, in America, right? Because of the disproportionate number of people in that 18 to 23-year range. And yet many institutions, and I'm sure all of yours are very much aware of the demographic transformation that's making it harder and harder to fill up freshman classes. So there's a lot of opportunity here, I think, for us to keep working together on this issue of increasing age diversity on college campuses. It's good for everyone.
Yeah, thanks, James. And I want to underline, I agree with you that Joanne and others who've been involved in the Age-Friendly University initiative have, and GSA generally, has a lot of good materials, particularly with respect to ageism. The whole Reframing Aging initiative is kind of one that can be used. People have talked about sending letters to DEI groups. Well, there's lots of good boiler text, so to speak, available in a lot of those documents that we already have access to. But I'd be interested, there's some other points in the chat. I don't know if people wanted to follow on beyond that. Karen had suggested, for instance, we could put together a document of all the centers that have had success getting ageism included in DEI, and trying to understand kind of what worked where you were. Some of these are probably unique to those institutions, but some may be common threads we could all take advantage of. And, Joanne, I don't know if you wanted to, you had kind of an important point, and James kind of made a similar one, but do you want to elaborate on your point a bit?
Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, I found that, being an AFU, kind of gives me a calling card around campus now, so that I can, go to our director of diversity and inclusion equity and say, we're an AFU, we're focused on, we support age inclusivity. How can we make these connections? So that was the way that I was able to get myself on our DEI council. And I think also I pointed out in the chat, and I think this is something maybe that David was even referring to, the data that we've been collecting with UMass Boston about age diversity on US campuses is showing that we really are diverse. We think of our campuses as being age segregated when we just think about traditional age college students, which is for the most part what many of our state students are. But if you consider faculty, staff, and graduate students and community partners, they're very age diverse. And so trying to raise that awareness on our campuses, I think does help. I forget there was, the other point that I pointed out is that, and I've had, lengthy discussions with my director of diversity and inclusion and equity, and he's just really good in understanding of this. There is a tension between just sort of adding on age inclusivity to other issues and really trying to figure out how do we really bridge those inclusivity issues. And we've talked a lot about the need to explore intersectionality around that. So, our students, might not be thinking about age now, but there are disparities in how they are going to age because of some of their backgrounds and connections to other social groups. So I think that's something that we have to play out and understand more. I think that it also, Neil, you've always said this, it takes persistence and patience. Right now, at least in my campus, DEI efforts are just in full swing, lots going on. So just trying to be considerate and mindful of what they're trying to accomplish, but being there to integrate any way we can, I think is really important.
That's a great point, thanks. I think latching onto intersectionality, if we say it's aging and, as opposed to aging, period, gives us a little more of an opportunity to form alliances, coalitions, and basically not be seen as a competitor, but a collaborator in the diversity efforts on our campuses. And I think that's the big concern right now, at least if I look at my own campus, is that everybody's vying for top billing in these types of DEI situations. And I think we can kind of, I hate to say we're the voice of experience, but we are. We can at least raise some of the dimensions along which diversity ought to be practiced or thought about. David, you have your hand up?
Yeah, some of the great research on bringing diverse groups together is to have common ground. And the one variable of common ground that we all share is that we will all age unless we die prematurely. So I've tried to use that as leverage to show that, we have commonalities. But you're right, it's difficult. So the advocates for Black Lives Matter, when given the opportunity to have new curriculum requirements for other diversity issues, have sometimes said, man, we've waited our turn. This is our time. You're watering things down. And this is kind of what I think I heard in Neil's comment. And I understand that fully. So it just means that we're walking on, potential landmines, but with our experience, we ought to be able to pull it off.
Thanks, Dave. Any other thoughts or approaches or strategies that people have started to use or thought of using to try to get aging in, at least one of the dimensions that people think about for diversity?
Neil, for me, it's all about being strategic and getting onto agendas by basically speaking to the overlap, the intersection of challenges that folks face. And so, for example, we made it our business to organize our annual clinical geriatrics colloquium this year around the theme of advancing anti-racism and DEI in the delivery of age-friendly healthcare. And I'm looking at Peter, who's going to be our keynoter at that event on Monday, the 25th. And so we're able, I think, strategically to speak to this critical point of intersectionality, because I think that is the only way that we're likely to build coalitions and any degree of mutual understanding around related challenges across various cohorts.
Lots of good points in the chat. Everybody should, before they log off, remember to save the chat. We'll try to capture all that as well in minutes for our meeting. Dave, you still had your hand up. Did you have another point?
Okay. I'll put it down.
Okay, sorry. And I have to keep scanning here because I'm across a couple of screens. Didn't see any other hands raised. All right, I want to move on to, because believe it or not, time is flying as we're having fun here today, or at least I hope you're having fun. I want to move on to the another point, which was the lessons learned from COVID. And I guess I was expecting not to have that topic anymore, because it looked like things were going well in May and June before things exploded again, particularly in my state. And so we're slowly inching away from many of the restrictions. Well, not the state of Florida, which kind of lifted everything and paid a very heavy price as a result. But we're slowly but surely, and I hope it's surely, I'd say tentatively at the beginning to move towards perhaps more normal times. Haven't quite done it yet for, we all know, lots of conferences, including GSA, decided to go virtual instead of hybrid. But do people have any, I mean, I could say a little bit about the things that we did here. I think I've mentioned them in the past. What I guess I'll phrase it the following way. What strategies or approaches did you use at your center that you felt helped keep it on kind of an even keel, or at least prevent it from sliding down in priority for the people who fund you. Over this past, it's almost 2 years, not quite, year and a half, I would say, I guess. So if people want to share success stories, or we learn more from our failures than our successes, I'd be happy to open the floor up and look at the ideas and the practices people have adopted. Feel free to raise your hands. And I have to scan screens in case there are any hands here. Okay, Erin, I saw you.
One of the things we've recognized is, as much Zoom fatigue as people have, one of the things we've recognized is that we have been able to pull in a unique group of folks in our older adult education who don't have any interest in being around other humans, whether there is COVID or not. And so we are actually intending, as we move forward with many of our events, to continue hybrid activities so that folks who don't want to leave their homes for any number of different reasons have that opportunity. And we're recognizing that both faculty staff, as well as our older adult activities, that a positive lesson learned through COVID that will be moving forward is that having these hybrid activities actually is engaging of more folks who, I can't make it across the highway to get to your meeting, but I can jump on at least for the middle half hour on Zoom if I have that opportunity in my office, similar to some of the older pieces. And so moving forward, that's just kind of one of the things that we have learned.
Appreciate that insight. I think many of us have probably experienced exactly the same thing. In fact, I'd say, particularly for our speaker series and some of our brown bags, our turnouts have probably been stronger during COVID than they were when they were in person, simply because of the convenience factor that Erin just pointed out. Pamela? You have a hand up, but a mouthful, I see.
I was agreeing with you completely.
Okay.
Giving my support to that idea.
Any others have the opposite experience, that things went downhill when you went online? No.
I would just add on to the little bit of what you were saying before, is that, you know, our seminars have become broader in audience for speakers as well as students. Although in a very small sample, I've noticed that there's a core group who really still want to come in person. Yeah, so we are doing, you know, a hybrid, which is harder on those of us who are running it, but really trying to accommodate, you know, those. And yeah, I don't know if there's a little bit of a trend towards younger or older. I'm not even gonna make a guess, but it's, you know, trying to do both when we can.
Great observation, thanks. Ken, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'll mention that Wendy Rogers and I are working on a poster for the GSA meeting to sort of take account and compare what Purdue and University of Illinois have done. So it's an issue that's very timely. I'm interested in all the comments. One of the things that we've seen is, as has been said, some things moved to online, and it reached a different audience. Some people wanted the personal or the face-to-face, and they dropped out, and different people came in. And then I think, you know, it's just this sense of how hard you want to work on the online side to make these things happen. For instance, you know, we do something called Tech Team, where we send undergraduates out to senior living facilities to help older people with their devices. And obviously we had to shut that down, but we had a few students who were willing to work over the phone with someone on their computer and things of that sort. So it was a more limited reach, but these students were very enthusiastic about doing it. I think for them, it was great for those who were served, but truly we served a smaller audience.
Great point, thanks. Yeah, and that Tech Teams thing is something I think maybe a number of us have experimented with, particularly those at larger scale universities where you can get people from information studies or other types of communications and so on to help on that. Ross, you have your hand up too?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what's been going on during COVID. So we have a relatively large PhD program, and particularly the students who are in their first and second year when COVID started had a really hard time adjusting to not having that in-person contact. You know, we try to make sure we're in the same area here, and year after year, students develop these nice groups, support groups, and we had these students come in from all over the United States and just be on their own in their little apartment, just hopping on Zoom or Microsoft Teams. And yeah, some of them really suffered mentally, and it was really difficult to help them because of the lack of contact. We did our best. I kind of tried to rush into the office as soon as we could and at least meet with them one-on-one with the mask on, you know.
Right, thank you. Patricia, Patricia Hein, you had your hand up too?
I think James was first.
Oh, James, you want to jump in? Sorry.
Ladies first, Patricia, go ahead.
Now, just was gonna say, like, in terms of access to information and education, I have been amazed. So since that's mostly one of the areas that I have been developing is like curriculum and education and access, and how global the programs that we were developing were able to be. Like, we had so much access from individuals from the Philippines, and so many areas of the globe where they didn't afford to wake up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. to participate because that was available to them and to network. So it was so nice to see the globalization into the programs because we are in this virtual platform. So
that's great, James. And then Miles.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer up that certainly for GSA, one of the outcomes of the pandemic, of course, has been our inability to convene in person as we hope to, for example, in Phoenix this year. But one of the things we learned in 2020 and that has continued throughout 2021 is interest groups who figured out, wow, this meeting in person virtually works really well. Suddenly they're meeting more frequently, and that is leading to more things being accomplished, more contributions from the interest groups to advance the research interests in their particular area. So oddly, that's been a bit of a win, so much so that we plan to have interest groups, as was announced at the top of the hour, not only in the month of October, our member engagement month, but then also at the annual meeting as well, because there's this desire to meet. And so I think that's been very, very positive for us. It does also enable us to have our international members participate. And again, we're learning how to bring them in better via Zoom during these COVID times. And lastly, I would be remiss if on behalf of GSA, I didn't say, don't forget to tune in 3 weeks from today for the opening session where Ken Ferraro, one of our own here, will be receiving the Kleemeyer Award, the 2021 Kleemeyer Award, one of GSA's top honors. So three weeks from today. So congratulations, Ken.
Yeah, congratulations, Ken. We have a very distinguished group with us here today. Okay, Miles, I think you had your hand up too, and then Patricia.
Well, first, I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that, but congratulations to Ken, of course. Also, I think I was just going to reiterate what I feel like I'm also hearing from others, which is just the interesting pluses and minuses of the shift and the kind of unexpected ways that there were some things that actually worked quite well and some ways that didn't. We took a big hit to our Osher lifelong learning memberships during this time. You would think that it would get better, and that you could reach more older learners that were interested in more virtual classes, but it was really that connection seeking that people did not feel like was happening in the virtual world for those kind of learners. But then with our PhD students and the kind of synergistic research that we do. We've got a couple of groups. I helped launch an international program, supplemental training program for PhDs on population aging. And that has been wildly successful. And I think that this backdrop of COVID actually helped to show us how well we could coordinate a global set of scholars and experts and partners to kind of make that happen and enrich it as much as possible. And then we also have a working group that we had to shift. We had to shift over to more because of these incoming PhDs. I feel like Ross discussed this, that we had to shift a little bit more. Instead of presenting papers or workshopping papers, we made sure to have more professionalization topics just to make sure we were keeping our students connected and embedded. And surprisingly, we've still been able to keep up the same amount of kind of, grant submissions and things like that. And I think it's only because we really made the commitment to meet regularly virtually. So it's been a wash.
Any other last minute thoughts before we kind of move to other business? I think people have summarized a lot of the pros and cons. The only con I have not found a solution to, particularly with internationalization, and a lot of us have attended international conferences online, is the time zone issue. That has been very trying. That's one of the reasons we all get together in one place at one time, is that we, although we're jet lagged, some of us when we get there, at least we have kind of a set block of time that everybody's going to be hopefully awake and aware during when we're physically together in one location. And I haven't seen any good solutions outside of really trying to pace things at different times. And one other solution I did see, which I thought was pretty creative, it was repeating sessions at different times. But that's kind of twice the load for whoever organizes that particular session or conducts it. But I'd love to hear about other ways we can solve the time zone issue. All right, I'll leave that one alone. Are there any other issues that people would like to raise under other business? Yeah, Ken, you had a point?
Just real quick, this is mostly for James, but for all of us who love GSA. Last year when we did the online thing, we didn't have names on the screen for the delivery platform. So as I'm speaking here, you can scroll through all the photos, the images of people, and their name is there. And on the platform last year, we had no names. That made it very difficult for conversation because you would like to say, hey, that was a good point, Bill or Patricia, but you didn't know who was on. So I don't know if that's something that can be fixed at this stage or it's already been fixed, but I raised my hand.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. We're using a completely different platform this year. It'll be essentially convening via Zoom calls, so it'll be a very, very different environment. So I think that it will increase engagement because you'll be able to see so many of the faces there. That is for the vast majority of sessions. For the very large sessions, like the Kenton Kleinmeyer Award session or the opening plenary session, we'll be using more of a Zoom webinar format, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, and we'll just have the major speakers there featured. But for the vast majority of the scientific sessions, Ken, we'll be using a Zoom platform, so it should be remedied. So thank you for that.
Great point, thank you. Pamela, you had a raised hand here.
I do, and I'm going to jump into that question to James about the platform. So I apologize for taking advantage of the opportunity. So that means if I'm going to share my slides, I'll be doing it like I'm sharing on Zoom for the conference.
Yes, that's right. All speakers are required to upload audio and slides in advance to the online platform. That was put in place so that individuals would not have the problem they have during the in-person meeting, which is if you're in one room, you can't be in another. Picking up on the experience we had last year in developing that online library, we're requiring that again this year. So individuals will be able to go and listen to audio and slide presentations anytime they want between the opening of the meeting until the December 31st. In addition, individuals will be presenting live. So indeed, you'll be able to share your slides live at that point using that feature.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Pam, you have a raised hand?
Yes,
Other
the
Pam,
Pams
sorry.
have it today. So
Right.
I just, James, I wanted to tell you something that happened yesterday. It was just absolutely hysterical, but I didn't know what it was. So we had our wonderful IG yesterday, and Gina was so patient and kind with us. It's Gina Schoen, so I just want to shout out to her. But when people appeared, and this should frighten everyone on this call, everybody clocked in as Pamela Teaster. So for an amount of time, there were 10 to 12 Pamela Teasters of different looks on our IG. Now we got them fixed, but I want to tell you, it's the funniest thing I saw that happened to me all day long. It was just like, Finding John Malkovich or something like that. It reminded me of that movie, but it was just hysterical. I mean, I was like, why are there two of me? And then there were a lot of me. And so I didn't know what we did. It was hysterical. I had to go tell people because they laughed too. So it was a moment of levity, but it's going to think.
I've actually seen that happen once before, Pam. But I don't know what the cause was either.
Thank you
Well,
for
it's
sharing.
not just me. That's the good thing to know. And there are not so many of me.
Did you share your link with somebody? Because that's how it comes in. If you shared your personal link, that's why we have all these meeting participants, because we have that general link, meeting
I
participants.
thought I sent the link you sent me. I wouldn't have sent my own because I didn't have one. I don't think, but I could have.
Yeah, it's special.
Anyway, it was very funny. I actually think it will add a moment of levity in the whole thing.
Okay, I appreciate that observation, and it's great to know technology can clone you successfully, right? Well, not you, unfortunately.
You can be a CGI character. That's what you can be.
Yep. All right. Any other last minute? I know our numbers are starting to shrink a little bit here because we're kind of a little offside with a 2:15 ending. But any other last minute points? Otherwise, we will schedule probably a half-year meeting. I'll be looking forward to getting some feedback when we circulate that document from everybody. And we'll also arrange, and I think other Patricia had suggested we could put a document up using SharePoint and GSA to be able to gather the information about our individual centers. Pam Teaster, you still have your hand up? Was that for another point or? Okay.
I'll get rid of it.
All right. Well, okay. If there are any other questions or concerns or comments people wanted to make? If not, we'll give you back a few minutes of your afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today. This has been a wonderful opportunity to see everyone. I was really, really hoping we'd be together in person in Phoenix, but I guess we're going to have to wait till next year on that. Thanks everybody for joining. Have a great day.